Hi, this is Jen Rubin, and this is Jen Rubin's Green Room. I came to a realization this week. It's positive, and it's not shared by everyone, but I really do think the Republicans are headed for a drubbing. And here's why. Americans don't like batshit crazy stuff, and that's what the Republicans are all about. We saw it this week. We saw it in a decision from an Alabama judge who takes God and his view of religion as his walking papers, not as his constitutional obligations require, to ban IVF in the great state of Alabama. This has the potential, of course, to be repeated in other states. Why are we there? Because we have a radical Supreme Court that says we don't have a right to abortion, meaning we don't have a right to reproductive freedom. So IVF, gone. Now, didn't we warn them about this? Didn't we say that next they would come after IVF, they would come after contraception? Well, they're doing it. And Americans don't like this stuff. There are thousands and thousands of families, perhaps millions, who have used the benefits of IVF to have families. That the Republicans say, no, we're not going to let you do that. So get this. They're going to tell you when you're forced to give birth, even a rape victim who's 14 years old, and they're going to tell you when you cannot have children. A married couple wanting to use IVF. That's crazy stuff, and that's the kind of stuff Americans don't like. They don't like a big bad government telling them what they can and cannot do with their family. And the Biden campaign has been handed this gift, and they should run with it and remind people every day that they want to tell you when you can have children, when you can't, and when you must have children. That's creepy stuff. That's totalitarianism. But that's what these Republicans are all about. What else are they all about? Well, Donald Trump and the Republicans are at it again, playing footsie with the Russians. This is like a bad joke. If you remember, back in 2016 and in 2020, the Russians tried their best to intervene on Donald Trump's behalf. At one point, they sent a Ukrainian with ties to Russia to try to lure Senators Johnson and Chuck Grassley of Iowa into a plot, a convoluted plot that said Biden intervened on behalf of his son, who was on the board of Burisma, a Russian energy company, in order to stop a prosecution. It made no sense whatsoever because, of course, Biden was acting on behalf of the president and the alliance to get rid of a prosecutor who was not doing his job. In other words, he was acting to increase scrutiny of Burisma. Didn't matter that it made no sense whatsoever. The senators, particularly Senator Johnson, ran with this, even though it was discredited. Well, wouldn't you know it? The House Republicans seem to have developed amnesia. But it's not even that. It's that they knowingly pursue a plot that has already been discredited. That's the current plot that they are using as the basis for impeachment. Not only, they say, did Biden intervene, a plot that has already been debunked, but he was bribed to the tune of $5 million, $10 million. Well, the problem is that information, they were told, came from a unreliable raw intelligence interview from the FBI. Turns out that interview with one Mr. Smirnov is, again, a Russian plot. Wouldn't you know? Why is it that the Russians always know where to go with their plots? But they do. So this fellow not only cooked up this nonsense allegation, which he was indicted for because he lied to the FBI, but, get this, he also claims to have been interviewed, had connections with Russian intelligence. Wouldn't you know? Now, you got to ask at one point, are the Republicans traitors or just dumb? Do they constantly fall into these plots cooked up by Russia because they're not very bright or because they're misdirected and disloyal to the United States? Well, it's sure beginning to seem like the second, because after all, how many times do they have to have these things blow up in their faces? And the fact that they still are pursuing the impeachment, they haven't said that they would drop it. They're still going forward, knowing that this likely is another Putin plot to help Donald Trump. And why is it that Putin keeps trying to help Donald Trump every single time and undermine the Democratic president or the Democratic candidate for president? It's because he is his poodle. Putin knows that with Donald Trump in the White House, NATO will dissolve. He's already invited Russia to attack. He'll not only have Ukraine, he'll be on to the Baltic states and the rest of Eastern Europe. Putin's dream of a Russian empire rebuilt will come to be. That's what the Republicans stand for. That's what their foreign policy is all about. They would invite a Russian operative in to try to discredit and impeach our president. They would back someone who is inviting Putin to invade, and they would deny aid to Ukraine. Oh yes, they're still on that. Now word has come that the Democrats are going to put together a discharge petition. That's a mechanism for getting something on the floor when the House Speaker doesn't want to. We'll see if that comes through and if we get through this by the skin of our teeth. But look what we have done to Ukraine. They have had to abandon cities. They have lost territory because the Republicans in the House of Representatives are more loyal to Donald Trump and to Putin than they are to America and to our Western democratic values. There's no disputing that. There's no argument. That's what they're for. And I got to think, Americans may not think much about democracy in the abstract, but they know when someone's a traitor. They know when someone is betraying our country because they want to stay in the good graces of a crackpot like Donald Trump, and worse, a dictator like Vladimir Putin. But we're not yet done with the insanity. Because, of course, the Republicans in both the House, the Senate, and certainly their presidential candidate have all kinds of plans for us. If they get restored or they get reelected to office, Donald Trump has told us, here's some more of that crazy stuff. He's going to round up illegal immigrants. He's going to deport them. He's going to reinstitute the Muslim ban. He's going to use the military to suppress dissent. He is going to weaponize the Justice Department against his enemies. This is crazy stuff. And once again, Americans don't like it. It's radical, it's weird, it's screwy, it's wrong. And Americans do figure this out. Remember, in 2022, they voted against all of the election deniers who were running in swing states for positions where they would be in charge of the election. So Americans do figure it out. It may take them a while, but they do figure it out. And that comes back to a central question. Why aren't we reading about this every single day, nonstop, on the front pages of the paper? Why instead do we get fed a steady diet of Biden is too old, he should replace Kamala Harris? You got me. You would think that the press doesn't realize that they'll be on the chopping block as well if Donald Trump returns to power. You would think that they would have some obligation to communicate to the American people, this is not an ordinary election. One guy is a normal, small d Democratic candidate. The other guy is a narcissistic, pathological liar and an authoritarian who is in Putin's pocket. You would think they would drop the pose of neutrality and tell it like it is, as they would if they were carrying coverage of a foreign election. But they can't bring themselves to do that because they have some screwy devotion to neutrality, to this notion that they won't pick sides. It's not neutral. It is a lie to present the Republican Party as just another party, and Trump is just another candidate. That's the lie. Artificially evening the scales, that's misleading the American people. And if we lose this election, if Republicans are returned, This will be on the heads of the American media just as much as it will be on the heads of the American people. So we return to a basic question. What do Americans want? Do they believe in democracy? Do they believe in the right to choose when to have kids or if to have kids? Do they believe in getting to choose what they read, not having books banned and librarians thrown in the clink? Do they think they have a right to marry who they want? Do they think they have a right to live in some safety, or as opposed to living on a battlefield with war-grade weaponry? What do they really want? Because ultimately this is about us. And there's a very large chunk of Americans who want something that is very contrary to our traditions, that abandons democracy, that abandons the idea of a multicultural, multiracial society. They do. And there are millions of them. And we need to come to terms with that, and we need to absolutely dedicate ourselves to making sure they do not prevail. There are millions of them. Are they enough to win an election? Well, if the pro-democratic, small d, democratic electorate stays home or says, yeah, but I don't really like Kamala Harris, or yeah, but Biden's too old, or yeah, but I really think, he should have done something different with the Hamas-Israel war. If that's the attitude, then the anti-democratic forces are going to win, and America, as we know it, will be over. That's the sobering truth. And I really wish our press would present that stark choice as often as they could, and consistently as they could, rather than cooking up a artificial disadvantage for Biden so that they can even the scales and make Trump seem just another choice. Not so bad, just another candidate. Well, if you enjoy this program and you enjoy our other programs, please tell your friends. They can click there and follow, subscribe on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever they get their podcasts. Bye-bye.